it's time for me to rank the palettes that I tried in the month of November. There are 10 palettes in front of me. It was a busy month, what can I say, and I have a feeling that December is going to look the same. November is obviously always a very busy time for launches, so let's get right into it. None of these palettes are bad quality. It's really a matter of preference, color story, how often do I see myself reaching for them, and also do they inspire me when I look at them. So in a 10th place, and this pains me to put this palette here because again, it is not that is bad. I just think there's other better color stories in this ranking specifically, and that is the collaboration between Blend Money and Lin's Makeup. I think this is a nice selection if you really haven't tried anything from Blend Money and you want to, but you don't necessarily want a full-on rainbow palette. You have a little bit of bits and pieces here and there. So you have your yellow, your green, teal, purple, pink. So you have quite a bit to choose from if you wanted a smaller, more condensed palette in the Blend Money formula. So formula on point, same as always for Blend Money. And I really enjoy playing with it. It's a little bit more of a companion palette for me. And in 9th place is the Beaute palette from Adept Cosmetics. And this one is slightly higher up because it does have more shimmers in here. And the shimmers are really, really beautiful. I really like the more interesting neutrals in here, which is this one and this one. This one's a little bit more flaky, but I do like the slightly greenish tone to it. And you know, I love me some shimmers. As for the color story, it is a challenging color story. I don't think this is really something that I've seen done before because it does have 2 primary color mattes. So it's a little bit unconventional color story, which is why it is a little bit lower, but a little bit higher because it is just a little bit something different and the shimmers are really beautiful. In 8th place, I know where they were going with this. This is like a more colorful holiday Christmas palette without being the expected color story for Christmas per se. And it's the Rosy Jingle palette from Odin's Eye. Now, I think that they kind of put themselves in this position from the first 2 launches of the first 2 palettes a couple years ago. Those were the most kind of very on the nose color stories for a Christmas holiday eyeshadow palette, and then last year's kind of went a little further away, so I feel like this year's were a little further step away. I kind of wish they only launched 1 palette per year. I think it would have spaced out the color stories a little bit better because I think at this point they can't come out with another reddish green color story as they've already done that, or the blue one, which is still such a beautiful color story. So I see where they're going. They're trying a different take on it since they've already done what was expected for a holiday palette, if they make sense. There is a new formula in here that I haven't experienced in any other Odin's Eye palette, and it's the shade Toffee, which is misspelled, and don't let me get started on that. It's 2024 now, and Odin's Eye does consistently seem to have at least 1 palette a year that launches that has some spelling errors, but I digress. This is a weird, slightly thicker, almost like cream to powder formula, but it's really hard to pick up on a brush, I find. It's kind of like the Natasha Denona cream to powder, but not as great, not as easy to use. So I really hope they don't have any future palettes coming out with this formula. I'm glad that there's only 1 shade in here and not any more of those. Palette is lacking depth. I really like the pastel tones. Like overall, I really enjoy the color story, but I think that addition of some deeper mattes would have really helped this color story out. The shimmers in here are nice, but some of them are squishy, so that is not my favorite thing in general. In 7th place is the Ensley Rain Nutty by Nature palette. This is a mini little 6-pan palette. They've started launching these once a month. It's basically like a sampling of Ensley Rain if you don't want to buy their larger palettes, as they are quite expensive. So this is a more concise, smaller color story. So far they've launched 2, and I saw they just revealed the next one for January, I believe, or was it December? So this one is squirrely themed, and I did not do a dedicated video on this one, but I did feature this one in a reel, so make sure you're following me on Instagram if you want to check that reel out. I think it's a nice neutral color story, kind of more everyday. I do think this shade Secret Stash is a little bit unconventional for here, but I think that's what makes it just a little bit different and not as monochromatic and more of like a full neutral color story. And this shade is not squishy, which I was happy about, though it is flaky, and this one is more on the smooth side. This gives you some nice depth, so I do enjoy this palette and this color story, and I really like that they're doing these smaller palettes. I do have the bunny one as well, but I haven't tried that one out yet, so that will be in next month's palette ranking. So then moving on to 6th place, this one was pretty unexpected for me as well, and that's the Revolution Beauty The True Icon palette. And I did do a whole comparison video between this one and the Patrick Ta Something Major Dimension 2 palette. I think that this is basically duping, and I am so impressed by this. So impressed. It's a little bit lower, but also a little bit higher because one, yes, obviously this is like a neutral color story, but the shimmers in here, spectacular, beautiful. Give me 14 of them. This is such an everyday palette and I love it. I love the shimmers in here. Super impressed by this. We'll love to see more palettes that are just full of whatever the shimmer formula is, because I know they have some other palettes in this kind of collection. However, it seems to have slightly different shimmer textures in it, so I'm a little apprehensive on trying those. And also none of those color stories really grab my eye. So the 5th place is the Shellwe and Freya collab, the Summer Garden, and this is such a grungy color story. I really appreciate all the different tones in here, and the shimmers are so interesting. All 3 of these shades have a little bit of extra like sparkle in them in terms of like a totally different color sparkle. So they're very dimensional, very unique shimmer shades. They are a little bit on the darker side, which I do prefer, like a nice balance of some darker and lighter shimmers, or kind of like in between shimmers as well. I think it's a really beautiful color story. It gives me kind of winter fall vibes, kind of like the transition of those kind of grungy tones between each other in those seasons. And then in 4th place is the Silvery Bliss palette from Odin's Eye. So this one, also a holiday palette. I really love this color story. I think this kind of color story with red and black is very trendy this year, and I am so here for it. I do think this one is a little bit more monochromatic compared to some other ones like the Van palette from Bella Beaute Bar, for example. The only shade in here that I really don't like is this one right here. It is completely squishy. I mean, I can't put that anywhere near my crease. Some of the other shades are slightly squishy as well, but I can kind of get away with them if I just put them on the lid and nowhere near my crease. Between the shimmers that are in here and in the Rosy Jingle, I do prefer the shimmers in here, the variety overall, especially this one, Silvery Bliss, which is kind of ironic because it's not a silver shade. It's got like a little bit of a cream color to it. So really beautiful and neutral sparkly shadow. Some of these are a little bit more topper-like. So I think you can get a decent variety of looks here because you have the brown, you have a gray, you have a mauve, you have a pink. So it adds a little bit more interest. And of course we have some deepening up shades. I do think these two are a little bit similar maybe, but I do really like this color story a lot. And in 3rd place is the Atlantis palette from Cosmetics. I'm so excited to see them launching more palettes. And this is not the only palette that they launched recently. And they definitely have a really great thing going. I've been loving the theme. So this is a cool tone blue gray, but also cool tone brown color story, which I really enjoy that. It adds variety in here, so it's not so monochromatic, though there are 3 blue shimmers, but I like that there's a gray as well. This shade is unfortunately squishy, but it is so beautiful. Very shifty, very beautiful. I really enjoy the mattes in here. I think they blend really nicely. And in 2nd place is the other palette that launched along with this one, and it is the Violet Crazy palette, also from Cosmetics. I mean, they're just on a roll, and this one is, I would say, a little bit more monochromatic, but again, we have some browns with some purples and some mauves as well. So I think you get like a nice variety of different kind of looks you can create, especially with the different pairings of the shimmer shadows. And I especially love this one, and this is such a beautiful iridescent. I did wear this palette the other day to work, and I used the Too Faced Shadow Insurance Primer and the Shine On Shimmer Shadow Enhancer from me and Clionadh's collab, and I had great wear time with the shade on the lid. So really enjoying this palette. Really love me some purples. I think it's a really well done palette, and you might have already guessed which palette is in 1st place. I bet you already know, based on just, if you know me, if you've been on my channel, you know I love me some grungy tones, especially paired with some stunning shimmers, and that is why the Ensley Rain Light in Your Eyes palette is in 1st place. I mean, oh my gosh. I love the shimmers in here, especially Besties, Glimmer in Time, Eyes That Light Up, Endless Light, because while they're not shifty, they're so shiny and easy to use. Pick up on a brush and just put them down. They're quite opaque, and a little bit goes a long way. They're so stunning. There's some other interesting shades in here like Prismatic Glow, Head in the Sky, Radiant Soul. I did do comparison swatches in my dedicated video on this palette, and I really enjoy the Ensley Rain matte formula. So those two things together, between beautiful shimmers, beautiful mattes, that's why this palette is #1, and I just look forward to using this one. I really just keep wanting to reach for this palette almost every day. I have to get myself to use something else because I do always want to make sure that I use the palettes off camera before I do this palette ranking, so I can really get the best idea on how I feel about them. So let me know in the comments below, what is your favorite palette for the month of November? It does not have to be a new launch by any means, just what is something that you are really gravitating towards. I would love to hear your thoughts, and that's everything for this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time.